Hi, welcome back. So we are in chapter 6, and this is going to be the last chapter of our book, The Research from the Start to the End. Execution of the research project. In this chapter, we're going to discuss 4 important sections. In the first section, we'll be looking at the philosophy of measurement, and then the philosophy of subject, followed by research data, and finally a quick review on writing formal research, and of course quick conclusion on the chapter. Let's go ahead and explore the first section, and that's the philosophy of measurement. In this section, we will be looking at 3 outlines, and the first outline, a quick introductory, then presentation of measurement, and finally instrument design. Let's go ahead and discuss the importance of establishing and building up skills on the subject of measurement from philosophical perspective before taking into any practical field or before you start your research. So measurement is the way as a human are justifying and perceiving things. Let me show you the following illustration. On the screen, we see 2 sides. On the left-hand side, we see a shape. On the right-hand side, we see a word. Now, our job in this chapter to understand the meaning of measurement. And the idea starts as follows. Let's assume there are 2 researchers in this side, and this is the first researcher and this is the second researcher. And both of them, for some reason, are interested to measure actually this shape. So this researcher decided to look at 3 factors, variables, element. It doesn't really matter for now. To look at color, to look at size, to look at the dimension. So this is the way the first researcher decided to observe or to measure or to quantify this shape. So the first step essentially is to decide on the number of factors or variables that you would like them to represent the shape. In the second step, the researcher must and have to come up with a quantity to quantify. For example, when I say color, space of possible values that can identify the meaning of color. For illustration purpose, let's assume this researcher decided that any of those numbers are the possible values to represent colors. For the second element, the size, he decided to start from 1, 2, 3, and the list can continue to infinite number. For the dimension, he decided to set, for example, only these possible values. 20, for example, 32. So from the perspective of researcher 1 is a vector color 30 in, for example, size of 5 and dimension of 41. Now, the second researcher decided something else to choose dimension color. The second difference, measurement or numerical presentation of this number. Same thing, he chose for the second factor in this color, for example. To the second researcher, this shape is represented in the following measurement. So you could see now the meaning when I have this physical shape. It is possible to pick or to choose number of factors that represent the shape, and each factor have a space of its own number. Now let's look at the right-hand side of the space and to measure motivation. How to measure motivation? Once again, from the perspective of the first researcher, he needs to choose a representative measurement or factors that represent. So we decided to work on, for example, decide working hour, sleeping hour, and then, for example, smiling. And again, don't forget what we do next is to work on the possible values. For the second researcher, he decided to work, for example, working hours, sleeping hours, and finally maybe hobbies. Now the point is, if he wanted to measure a motivation of this individual using his own scale, he saw that his motivation represented by 8, by 6, and by 2. For the second researcher, he saw the same individual according to his own scale represented by 10, 8, and 0. Now, this is just a quick philosophical presentation, of course, but the idea is in there to understand the meaning of measurement. Now, it's quite obvious on the left-hand side here, this is an objective word. On the right-hand side is kind of a subjective word. That's why in the world of measurement, it is important to see the difference if you have a physical existence of the thing or the object you're trying to measure, or you have a logical thing. But the actual fact that these two steps sustain or remain the same. The first step, working on the factors that you would like to choose to represent what you are measuring. Second, you decide the numerical presentation on their measurement. Next, we're going to look at presentation of measurement in the next outline. I will see you then.